If the policemen were not with us, our journey would have ended. They're right there and then. And next day, we were robbed by a renegade unit of Indian Army. And people used to talk about who got killed and when who got attacked all the time. You know, and they talking about in graphic details. I'm so traumatized. I never realized it. There's somebody asked me, what's heaven? I would say, is the road in Pakistan after the bridge.
Hi, I'm Adnan Chaudhary. I'm joined today by Sabir Abdur Rahman. He was born in modern-day India before India, and he lived there for 7 years, after which he spent his school years in Pakistan, and for his master's education, he came to the US. Since then, he has been a home builder in the area, now retired, and today we're going to talk about the 1947 partition of India and Pakistan, which occurred in 1947 when he was 7 years old. He has a remarkable memory, and he has written a book about his experiences during that year, during that 4-month period. It's called Flight of the Living Corpses, My Family's Journey Through Hell in 1947. And this is available on Amazon. So today we're going to talk about the events in this book, his first-hand experiences, and then we're going to spend a little time reflecting on some of the lifelong consequences that such an event can have. So, without further ado, maybe we can get started talking about what was the partition.
Okay, before I go there, let me tell you that this is the first book that I wrote. This is my work over the last 20 years, trying to figure out what is the meaning of life, what's the meaning of faith. And my younger brother, Dr. Abdur Rahim Chaudhary, helped me, your father.
Mm-hmm.
And after I finished this book and published it, that's when I published the second book, which you just showed, which is this one.
Do you feel that that first book prepared you to write this?
No. Actually, I've been writing this book for the last 30, 40 years. So this was independent.
Independent. Okay, well, it still got you in the book writing mode. So,
right.
That was accomplished.
That's right.
So
now, to answer your question, what was the question?
What was the partition?
What was the partition? Subcontinent of India has never been one country. Some outsider came first. Before the outsider, first there was an insider by the name Ashoka who tried to conquer other states besides his state and kept on conquering, and maybe 70% of India was under his rule.
And what year was this?
This is 268 BC. And after he died, it went back to the same small states all over the place. Then the Iranians came, and they started conquering state after state after state. And by the time the Mughals came, they had half of India under their rule. By the end of their rule, they had over 70% of India. But after the Mughals fell, India went back to so many different states, because the subcontinent of India is called a subcontinent because it's a continent by itself, surrounded by Himalaya on the north and ocean in the west. It was cut off from the rest of the world. It has over 20 different major languages, over 800 smaller languages. People have different cultures all over the place. They cannot be together. And that's why India was never one country. The Mughals tried to make it one country. They succeeded for a while, then it fell back. Then British tried to conquer the whole area, but even under British, there were 568 independent states in the subcontinent, besides the area the British directly controlled. So when the British, the war, when the struggle for independence by the Indians began, it was Hindus and Muslims were together in that struggle. Over time, it became that Hindus and Muslims did not get along, at least at the leadership level. Common people had no problem. Common people had no problem with each other, but the leaders just could not get along.
Over how much time? Between what years did this transition happen?
It started from 1885, and until 1920, they were all together. After 1920, they started developing differences. By 1937, they were still trying to stay together. But in 1937, the Congress party, which was Hindu-dominated, won most of the elections. There was the first election that were held in 1937. And the Muslim League, that represented the Muslims, lost everything. But they thought that since we are a major Muslim party, Congress will recognize our role in it and give us a minor role in the government. Congress simply ignored them completely. And they did not give them any role, and also they started making rules and laws that were not favorable to the Muslims. That's when the Muslims said, we have to be separate. Separate only in those areas where we're in a majority. That's how the partition came about.
Okay. So bring us to 1947 then. What was life like before 1947 in the years or months leading up to give us an idea of what was disrupted for you personally, for your family?
Until 1946, there was, in our area, there was absolutely no problem. Actually, the Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims lived together, respected each other, shared friendships, did business together, and really cared for each other. Things started in early 1947, when it became almost certain that there would be a partition. Most people on the Indian side were against the partition, and their anger was against the Muslim because they're asking for partition. Muslims became angry also that why are you not letting us have partition? So the anger started on both sides, but only at the leadership position. Common people, you know the 80-20 rule in business? It was 80-20 rule there also. 80% of the people had nothing to do with what happened. They were going on their own business. 20% of the people were involved in the conflict, but not all on the fighting side. Maybe half of them were causing problems, the other half was trying to stop them from causing problems. I have written that in my book, in the appendix. So that's how it happened.
So in the months leading up, you said since the beginning of 1947 up to August, which is when this started, what changes did you notice in the society? You know, you said everyone is getting along. Did you start seeing things that were signs that, okay, maybe there are some changes now. Maybe we have to be more careful in your immediate day-to-day life?
People who lived together had no problem with each other to the last day. The troublemaker came from outside. And there were some organizations going on both sides of the border. The Hindus did not participate too much in my province of Punjab. Sikhs did most of the organization, and they wanted the Muslims to leave their area or get killed. The Muslims on the other side, on the western side of the border, which had not yet been decided yet, but the Muslims started the killing Sikhs and Hindus. So it was going on both sides. But it started at very few places. Most of the places were peaceful. Our place was very peaceful. Then we started hearing about these stories. Such and such place this happened, such and such place that happened. And we started worried it may happen in our area. But no, our people will not do that. So we are okay. Then we started hearing that some troublemakers were seen in our area. Not from our area, not people who knew us, from far away. I don't know where they came from. But and then it happened. I don't know where these people came from. A group of Sikhs attacked a village 2 miles south of our village, set the village on fire, and people started running to escape the fire. They started killing them. We saw that fire. The whole region saw that fire. Everybody got worried. They said, what should we do? The people of our area said, keep sitting, we will protect you. The Sikhs and Hindus in our area were on our side. But these people were from some other areas. I do not know, because I was only 7 years old. I don't know all the details, but they were not from our area.
Okay. And so when you saw this fire and people started thinking that maybe we have to take some action, maybe we should do something, what were the options that were being considered in response to this fire? I mean, and just for some...
Actually, there were two incidences that caused us to leave. The first one was the fire, which we saw, but we did not know what it was, where it was, until late at night, some people from the village who ran away to save their lives came to our village. They were scared and terrified. Some of them were injured. They told us what happened. That's when we found out where the fire was and who caused the fire. But later that night, we heard the noise of a truck engine. We thought Indian Army is attacking us, because we had heard stories of Indian Army attacking Muslim villages. Renegade Indian Army, not normal. It was not normal for Indian Army, but the renegade units did that. But it turned out that truck belonged to a soldier from our village who had come to take his family to Pakistan. He talked to us. His name was, what was his name?
Meherdeen, na?
Meherdeen. You have read the book?
I have read.
So I'll keep testing you. Meherdeen met our elders and told them that this is happening all over Punjab.
What time did he come? Just so people have an understanding. What time in the night?
It must be after 10. after 10 p.m.
And people had been watching this fire raging from
We
when?
were watching the fire, and these people who came from that village to our village looking for shelter must have come around 9:30.
And the fire started when?
Fire started in the afternoon, early afternoon.
Oh, early afternoon.
Yeah, we have been watching it since middle of the afternoon. But during daytime, at night it became very scary.
Yeah.
The flames, the dancing in the sky, and the smoke going to the sky. It became. I remember that. I saw it. I was only 7 years old, but I remember it.
This must have been a massive, an entire village. What's the
Entire
diameter?
Entire village
Was burned.
Yeah.
And what was like the diameter roughly of this village?
This village had a population of about more than 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be something like 25 to 30 acres,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 50 acres of land.
Okay.
Square.
Yeah, and that's on fire. So at nighttime, Meherdin came.
The Meherdin came and he said, I'm here to take my family to Pakistan and you must leave also.
Mm.
After he left, our elders started debating, where are we going? Nobody wanted to leave. Some said, let's stay, and if we are attacked, we will fight back. And some others said, with what? You don't have any weapons. You don't have any skills to fight. And those who are attacking us would be skilled fighters. And finally, they said, okay, we are not going to Pakistan. But let's get out of here and go to a safe place and wait for the crisis to be over. When it's over, we'll come back.
Okay.
That's how we left the second day.
So Meherdin didn't fully convince
Meherdin left in the midnight. He didn't stay.
So people have an idea. He had an army vehicle.
He had an army truck.
This is 1947.
Right.
Nobody has vehicles.
No vehicle ever came to our village. That was the second. The first one was bus during the election the previous year.
Oh, I see.
That was the second vehicle we ever saw in our village.
And so he was in a quite unique position to have this vehicle and to
That's
drive
right.
his family
That's right.
over to Pakistan.
Yeah.
And he was also army.
Yeah,
That's
he was
army
in the
vehicle.
army. He was a soldier. I don't know what rank he was, but his superior must have allowed him to take the truck. Go get your family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so he probably made it after he left the village that night or the next day or 2 days or
who knows.
pretty
But
quickly.
it should not have taken more than 12 hours or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very different from the situation for everyone else in the village who didn't have an army vehicle.
No, we walked.
Yes. And so the decision was made to temporarily go somewhere.
Temporary leave.
Mhm.
Right.
And where did you go when this?
Actually, when we were leaving, the Hindus and Sikhs of our area were with us. And they were crying. Everybody was crying. We didn't want to leave, and that's why people were unhappy. And they didn't want us to leave. So they were unhappy. And they kept saying, we wish we could protect you, but we will try our best. And so we told them, take care of our possessions. Take care of our houses, take care of our crops, and when we come back, we will reward you. And that's how we left.
That was the plan. Then.
Yeah, our plan was to reach the police station and ask the police chief to give us escort to the nearest protected refugee camp, which was in a city called Ludhiana, which was about 50 miles from our place.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the plan. That's where we went. We got there late night.
Okay, so the fire happened. It's 10 p.m. You deliberated during the night.
Right.
You came to a decision by the next morning?
By the midnight.
By midnight.
Right.
And so in the morning,
Yeah,
you
nobody
decided
slept that night. We started packing.
Mm-hmm.
And packing also, our only means of transportation were the Bullock Carts. We had no other means of transportation. And they are very limited as to how much you can carry. So most of our stuff was cleaned and packed inside the houses. His houses were locked. Everything we left behind. And told our Hindus and Sikh friends, watch it. We are coming back.
But you never came back.
We never came back.
So when you went by this Bullock cart, if you went by, why not go by foot? Why take the animals with you?
Bullock carts was to carry the stuff. Most of us walked alongside the bullock carts. Bullock carts would be one driver and the stuff.
And what kind of stuff did you have when you first left?
Bare essentials. Food. Food for people. Food for animals. The valuables. And clothes. As many as we could pack. And that was primarily it is. Valuables, clothes,
like jewelry, precious metals, basically.
Gold and silver jewelry is very common among Indian women, and Punjabi women. They have a lot of gold and silver jewelry. They carried all of that, and any cash they had. The people usually had very little cash because our economy was barter economy. We did not pay cash for anything. We used to give wheat to get vegetable, or wheat to get meat. And that's how it happened. But there was little cash, and that's what we carried.
Okay. So you went to the police station then. You left with these few belongings,
right.
And you went to Balachaur, was that?
Balachaur. The name of the city is Balachaur, which is 6 miles from our village. We got there late at night.
Of the next day after the fire?
Next day after the fire. Next day after the fire. The police chief was approached for escort to Ludhiana refugee camp. He refused. He said, I'm setting up a camp here, nearby, and go there and I'll protect you there. Our people didn't want to go there. And they decided we'll go on our own. The police chief was either Hindu or Sikh. He was not a Muslim. And there were other policemen who were Hindus or Sikhs. There were only 2 Muslim policemen who were not present the day we reached there. They were on assignment somewhere. But they did come back very late at night, met with our elders and said, your decision to go to Ludhiana is right. We'll go with you. I have no idea how they arranged it with the chief, but they went with us. Part of the way.
Okay. Were those 2 policemen, were they instrumental in the part of the journey that they were?
They saved us once. Either that day or the next day, I do not remember exactly. We traveled from Balachaur to a village 2 miles away where my uncle and aunt lived, and the whole village joined us. The village name was Niana. Niana usually means child, but that was the name of the village. And from there, we kept on going in the journey. In the 2 policemen were riding on horses, wearing uniform and carrying guns. For me, that was a great sight. I had never seen horses, I never seen policemen, I never seen guns. So I was fascinated by that.
Uh-huh.
But they were they patrolling up and down on either side of the caravan. Either that day or next day, we were actually attacked by armed men who came very fast, approach our camp from the front side, and at that time the policemen were not in the front, they were in the back somewhere, and people from the front kept yelling, there are people coming with weapons, and they called on the policemen rushed up and intercepted those people. When they saw the policemen with guns, because these weapons, the weapon these people have are the sticks and staff and things like that, maybe knives, but the policemen had guns. So they stopped and they said, oh, we came here to see who these people are and if we can help them. We didn't believe them, but they did go back and policemen saved us. If the policemen were not with us, our journey would have ended. They're right there and then.
On day 2.
On day 2.
Or 1.
Day 2 or 3.
Day 2 or 3. Yes.
Right.
How many men are we talking? How many approached?
I have no idea, but it was large number.
It was a large number.
Right. It was large number. I have that image in my mind still, and I'm seeing a lot of people.
That's this is something that you hear about, these kinds of acts of violence. Again, a big group based, right? Like one group committing act of violence just because some other person is of another group. This is not comprehensible for most people. For example, I have never wanted to, inflict wanton death and destruction of any group in society.
Neither did I.
Neither do you. Neither do the
most
viewers.
Of the people.
Yeah, hopefully all of the people. So what is? How can we understand this? Because I struggle. I don't relate to it. I don't understand how people can come to this point where, oh, we are Sikh, oh, they are Muslim, or whatever, or we are Muslim, they are Sikh, oh, we have to kill them now. Like, this is, how do people get to this point? I mean, how does this happen?
I have not been able to comprehend that either. But there's so much going on right now in so many places where those with power are just killing those without power, those under their control, and it's going on in all the places. I have not been able to comprehend it. And the big thing is that if one group gets oppressed by somebody more powerful than them, and this oppressed group, with the help of somebody, free itself from that oppression, and then finds people weaker than them and start oppressing them. They don't remember that we were oppressed. So why are we doing to them what was done to us? I cannot comprehend that.
That's I was trying to understand. Maybe people get radicalized by the kind of stories that you're hearing. Like, if I try to understand what circumstance would I be most likely to go down this road, it's like maybe you hear about stories over there about people doing something to our people, and then that kind of justifies or maybe even demands an equal and opposite action by us here against these people. And then they hear that story, and then there's an arms race and tensions. Do you think it's like that, how it happened? Because you gave this example when you have multiple power structures.
Mhm.
But in this case, it was almost the worst kind of violence, maybe, in some sense.
It was
It
the
was like
worst kind.
grassroots violence.
It was the worst kind.
know?
I've written in my book that they were people from the West, maybe England or other European countries, reporters who have written about it. And they said that some of the violence they saw in Punjab was worse than Holocaust. This is how bad it was. Because the people were taking pregnant women and cutting their stomachs. And they were doing so many horrible things that I don't even want to think about it. I don't know why people do that. I have never been able to understand it.
It's not easy to understand.
No.
But if we look at what happened after this incident, the policemen then they saved you from one of these horrendous events that you've heard about. What happened after that?
Either that day or the next day, we reached the river Satluj. River Satluj starts from the north mountains close to the mountain of Tibet, or maybe in Tibet. I do not know exactly where it starts, but it's the longest river in that area. Maybe Ganges is pretty long too, but Yamuna is long, but Satluj is very long. And it's also very big. We reached the bank of Satluj in August, which is the highest amount of water in the river at that time. And it flows ferociously. And we have to cross it. There is no bridge. There was one little boat. The first, there was a debate started. Half of the people said, we are not crossing it. The other said, the people that we picked up on the way of my uncle's village, that those people know how to swim. Our people did not know how to swim. They said, we'll get you across. But the half of the people from our village said, we are not crossing. So the caravan split. And the policeman said, who are we going to support? This group or that group? We are not supporting either. They went back. So we lost the police protection. And those who did not want to cross just went their way. And those who wanted to cross started preparing for it. One little boat that could carry 2, 3, or 4 people and some stuff. And all the valuable had to go in the boat. All the clothes had to go in the boat. The bullocks and buffaloes, they could swim, but they had to be guided. And the bullock carts are wooden bullock carts. They float, but they have to be guided. I have no idea how long it took. It could have taken many, 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 many days. Maybe 10 days, maybe 12 days. I don't know how long it took, but we did cross and nobody was hurt. There was a miracle.
I mean, especially considering the state of the river.
Right.
How wide was the river roughly at that point?
More than a mile, I think.
More than a mile?
Mm-hmm. Very wide. If you stand on one end, you can barely see the other end.
Really?
Yeah.
A mile?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are we talking, roughly?
Roughly, we're talking about 400 people.
400 people?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know those numbers, that 1 mile long.
Right. Maybe not mile. It's very, very wide.
I mean, just knowing that you can't see the end easily.
That's right. It's very hard to see the other end.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's quite a Herculean task to even think to cross that, but then to actually do it with all the animals, the carts,
we did it.
Yeah.
We did it. And then when we got to the other side, I think sort of the spirit went out of the people. Now they didn't want to move. They settled down on the other bank of the river and just stayed there, out in the open. No shelter, no tents, no nothing. All on. We slept on bare earth under open sky. And we just kept on sitting there for several days. And one day, one of our elders said, if you're going to stay here, somebody is going to rob you. And nobody listened to him. He said, I'm leaving. He took his family and he left. And next day, we were robbed by a renegade unit of Indian Army. All they wanted was silver, gold, and cash. And they were ruthless in searching for it. And they took everything. And then they left. We were sure that after they robbed us, they're going to kill all of us. But they didn't kill anybody. And we were grateful to God that they didn't kill us. We got robbed of everything, all valuables. But we were grateful they didn't kill us. So that's when we hurried and left. But then the rain started also. The rain started and the whole earth was soaking wet. The roads were dirt roads. They had become mud. The Bullock Carts' wheels kept getting stuck. And it's very treacherous travel. I don't know how many days it took, but we did reach the Ludhiana camp.
See, no idea how many, roughly, idea of how long it took?
Many days.
Many days.
I do not know.
What
You're
did you
talking to a 7-year-old.
So what did you have to do to get the carts to move? Once
People
they got stuck?
pushed. When we left our village, everyone was sort of friendly to each other, helpful to each other, like a big family. They keep on helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
By now, we had been on the road for more than 15 days. And by now, they were sick and tired of the whole situation. They were frustrated and they were not friendly to each other. But if a cart is stuck, the carts behind it are stuck too. So they had to move it so that they can move. So it was out of necessity they started helping each other. But they kept pushing, and finally we reached it.
So at this point, what was on these carts? If the carts are causing so much trouble, you might think, well, let's ditch the carts. Maybe.
We ditched lot of people. We had, out of sentimental reasons, carried some heavy stuff also. Like in our family, my mother had a very nice bed. So my grandfather put the bed on the cart also. That was gone now. It had to be ditched. And there were so many other things that had to be ditched. He had carried all the books of the two of his sons and one his grandson, myself. He threw them away also. So this started ditching. Other people were ditching stuff also. But some of them were also throwing away Grain. My grandfather said, we are not throwing away grain. He actually picked up some grain that other people threw away. And that's why we never left we never ran out of food all through our journey. My grandfather kept saying, we can throw everything, but we have to keep food for animals and food for people. And he did.
That's
A lot of people starved. We did not.
that was quite a wise foresight that he had.
My grandfather was very wise. Your great grandfather, my grandfather was very wise.
I think there will be more examples as well. So
Right,
we're going to
right,
get to
right.
that. So at this point, what did you have left? Was it just food, basically?
Food and valuables.
But the Indian army, were you able to
They only
save?
took the gold and silver and cash,
Mhm.
clothes, uh, shoes, things like that.
So you still had
Yeah,
those,
right.
and that was what was on the cart. So it
And
was
food.
and food. Yes,
Mm.
it wouldn't have been possible to ditch the carts and people carry that, or it
No,
wouldn't have been practical?
no. People, it was too much for people to carry.
Mostly the clothes you could
The
carry.
carts
but
were necessary
they were necessary.
because when I only remember that's another peculiar thing about my memory. Even my elders say I remember a lot. I only remember the unusual parts. Most treacherous part are very happy parts. I don't remember all the journey.
Mhm.
So I do not know how much of the journey to Ludhiana was on dry roads.
Mhm.
I only remember the treacherous roads.
Mhm. So you couldn't get rid of the carts. You had to push on those
No,
treacherous
carts were
roads
necessary.
yeah.
No. That's our means of transportation.
And when you get wherever you're gonna get, maybe it's
Carts
also
are
your,
needed there also.
it's your livelihood as
Mhm.
farmers,
Mhm.
right? It's part of
Right.
the animal. So we haven't mentioned this yet, but this whole time, where was your father?
My father was in the army. Unlike Mehrdeen, my father was away. Mehrdeen was in local area, so he could come and carry his family. If my father was in the area, he would have brought his truck also, and we would have gone in the truck. But my father was in Burma. And he had been there since 1939. Although he visited few times, but mostly he was there. At this time, he was in Burma. The war was over, but he was still stationed in the army in Burma. He was a signal corps person. You know, in movies, you see somebody carrying a radio and making communications with somebody and telling his commander that they said this, and commander said, "Tell them this." That's what my father did. But we did not know anything about him. He did not know anything about us at this time. But he was still in Burma. He left Burma in January. And we are talking about August.
How do you think his presence would have made things different, or how did his absence affect things?
Unless he was able to get an army truck, I don't think his presence would have made any difference.
Because you weren't traveling alone, your family, you had your grandfather.
Right.
Who else was traveling with you?
My grandfather, my grandmother, two of my granduncles, my grandfather's cousins, four of my uncles, my grandfather's sons, one of my aunt, my grandfather's daughter, my mother, myself, and my younger brother Abdur Rahim, your father.
So especially with your four uncles, it's like you have some figures to help
I
out,
had a lot of elders and they protected me. That's one thing that I'm grateful for. They did not let the impact of the tragic situation around us affect me. They protected me so well. My uncles, my grandparents, my mother, my aunt, they all protected me and my brother. And for us, it was, if my memory is that it was fun and games all the time. Although what I saw and what I heard stayed in my conscious. And when I came back, that's when I realized how horrible things were. But my elders would not let me feel that.
What were some practical ways? Obviously, they couldn't protect from 100%, so you did experience, and we will talk about that. But what were those practical things that they did for you?
They took me everywhere with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they intentionally made every chore as a game. I remember one time I went with my uncle into a village to get some water, and on the way he cut some the green corn for fodder for the animals, and he said, "You cut some too. Make your own bundle." I made a small bundle myself and carried it. So it was he tried to make it a game for me, and this is what they did all the time.
That's a lot of love coming from.
That's right.
So even though your father wasn't there, there were people to take care of you.
My father's absence was not missed that much, as far as I was concerned. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10 elders to take care of me.
Takes a village to raise a child.
That's
this
right.
Kind of thing, you know. So that's an interesting thing. So, what was daily life like on the journey? Like, okay, so now you're going towards Ludhiana. You've crossed the river, and it takes a while. Sometimes it's treacherous because of the road. But I mean, these are all Muslims. Were they, doing wudu and praying? Were they? How were they cooking, especially making fire when there's rain? These kinds of things.
Fire was. There were two sources of fire. Wood, if you can find it, or cow dung, dry cow dung, because there was no other means of fire. As far as our cooking is concerned, is done on you take 3 pieces of stones of bricks and make sort of a U-shaped structure, and you put your pot on top of that and put fire in between that. So that can be done anywhere. So that's what we did. And we had our own grindstone with hand held grindstone. And my mother, my grandmother, my mother and aunt ground the wheat every day to make flour and to make bread out of it. So everything was done on the spot. And we had carried a lot of lentils, lot of various kinds of lentils with us, a lot of spices. So that's all we ate. Lentils cooked with spices, and wheat made from flour, freshly ground. And that's how we did every day.
It's interesting. even as refugees, you had spices.
Oh, my grandfather, they carried it. He planted well. He said, these are the things we need. We don't need all that stuff. Put it in the house. We'll come back and use it. But these are the things we need. Carry it.
I mean, there is something. I mean, people miss the taste of food after months.
That's right.
So it's very good that you had at least that much.
We had that much. We never ran out.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
and it's somewhat tasty too.
Yeah, the people were throwing stuff away. My father was picking them up.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was picking them up.
Okay, that's and how about namaz? Actually, I'm curious.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm sure everybody did namaz, but I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. It was also a normal thing, not a treacherous thing or a very happy thing.
Yeah,
been
everyone was regular.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was regular in prayers, but I don't remember that.
Mm-hmm. I was asking Hamza the other day if he had is my nephew 12, 13 or something, if he had a lot of questions. I answered many of them. But one that did you meet any Hindu or Sikh refugees in this journey that had come from Pakistan?
No. When we were in Ludhiana, we were camped closer to the railroad track.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the trains going both ways. And you could easily tell the train whether it is a Muslim train or Hindu or Sikh train. The Muslim train would have people sitting inside, cuddled up, very scared, very frightened. And you will hardly see them closer to the window. They would stay inside. They were the trains going to Pakistan, coming mostly from Delhi, UP, and going to Pakistan. Ludhiana was the main crossroad where everything went. The other trains were coming from on the other side. And these were the trains carrying Hindus and Sikhs. They were hanging from the doors, sitting on the roof, jumping up and down, laughing and they joking. So we could tell which train was which. We never met them, we saw them.
That's the only place where you really saw the other refugees.
That's right. That's the only place.
That's interesting. When you must have passed some Sikh or Hindu towns or villages on the way as you were journeying, or did you avoid them? Or
Fortunately,
did you see them,
no.
No?
Because most of the area was Muslim area. And most of the villages we passed through were empty. People had already left. We never saw a populated village on our way.
Wow.
If there was a populated village, it would be Hindu or Sikh village. We never saw one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my uncles did, but I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So, for many days, you're spending to reach Ludhiana.
Right.
And what happened when you finally got there? What was that like?
As I said, our caravan started together,
Mm-hmm.
picked up another village, and now it's a bigger caravan. At the river, our caravan, our village was much bigger than the other village. The other village may be 30% or 25% of our village.
Few hundred, maybe 100 or so.
Yeah. But our village was split into half at the river.
Mm-hmm.
When we reached the camp, there was no place where the whole village could settle down. So everybody has to find an empty space. So we were scattered all over the place. So we were not together anymore. Although we knew the such and such is over there, a mile away, such and such over there, half a mile this way. But we were not together. We stayed in Ludhiana for over 2 months. All of September, all of October, part of November. During this time, we had a flood. There's a river that's called Buddha. Buddha means old man. They used to call it Buddha Nala, meaning old man creek. But now they're calling it Buddha Darya, which means old man river. So old man river is a great phrase that is often used. But here we had an old man river right there. And old man river is not a creek, but it's not a river either. It's smaller than the other 5 rivers of Punjab. However, in 1947, nothing was normal. The river became a big river, and then it started flooding. When it started flooding, the water came into the camp. The whole camp was underwater, and there were hundreds of thousands of people in the camp living in 1 to 2 feet of water for several days. We did too.
Days.
For days. The journey was so miserable. Nobody can imagine. And then after the river subsided and the water flew back into the river, cholera broke out. And people started dying from cholera. I was the only one in our family who got cholera. I was sick for 12 days. Everybody knows it was 12 days because they were counting. This boy is going to die. This boy is going to die. Please, God, don't let him die. After 12 days, I began to recover. How long it took me to recover, nobody knows because nobody was counting anymore. But when I recovered, the cholera, one thing about cholera is you lose appetite. You don't want to eat anything. When I recovered, I regained appetite and wanted to eat something. And the first thing I asked was pickles. Achar. And my uncle, Deen Muhammad, who had lived in Ludhiana for several years, working in the textile industry, had a lot of friends in the city of Ludhiana. Just went to Ludhiana to get achar for me. Later on, I asked him, what made you do that? It was so dangerous. He said, I didn't care. My nephew hasn't eaten for 12 days, wants achar, I have to get it. So he found a Hindu friend of his who was surprised to see him, happy to see him. And he said, you took a big chance. And he got him achar and escorted him back to the camp.
I remember reading this account. You had told within the family these stories many years ago, like over 10 years, 15 years ago. I remembered some of them when I reread the book, but not all of them. I'm sure you told this one, but at the time I had heard it, I was myself around 15. And now I am older than your uncle was at the time, and I have nieces and nephews of my own.
The first time you heard it, you were 12.
12.
That's when we started the stories. And of course, you kept on hearing for the next few years, up to 15, up to 18. Because that's how it started. You guys told me, tell the story. And we started telling the story. I thought I would tell in one day, but it became a years long series.
We're still telling the story.
We are still telling the story.
But I mentioned that because when reading now, this was one of the most moving parts of the whole book is written in a very raw way.
Right.
But that one especially for me, because I have nieces and nephews, and I am now older than your uncle was at the time. He was about 24, 26 or so. And I can relate to that. That was, but I don't. How dangerous was it for him to go out of the refugee camp and do this?
It was very dangerous. It was very dangerous. Anything could happen. Because if he was recognized as a Muslim, then there were a lot of people who were just out to kill Muslims.
And were Muslims being killed just outside of the camp? Or?
Outside. The camp was protected. I don't know how they protected it, but we were told it's protected, and it was protected. Nothing happened inside. But nothing was inside the camp. You need water, you had to go outside. You need food, you have to go outside. And there were a lot of Muslim villages outside the camp who were empty because people had left. But they were stocked with food, and their sources of water, the water pumps. So people used to go to these villages to get water and to pick up food. Many times, a lot of people were killed over there.
And they weren't going too far outside of the camp? How far were they going out?
Maybe half a mile or quarter of the 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, that's not far at all. And that was regularly, you had to risk your life to get water.
That village I remember. People might have gone further, but I do not remember. That's the village. I went there once with my uncle. That's why I remember that village.
So even more about the camp. How many times did the water rise and fall? How many times was it flood? It was once.
Once.
And
I don't know for how many days, but it was more than one day.
And when it was receding, the water was receding. I think you mentioned there was like a mini river that had been formed
alongside the railroad track. There was swell. Actually, it was a swell. It became a creek, and then it became a very fast. As the water started receding, it became a ferociously flowing creek. And it became pretty deep also. Normally it would be maybe 2 foot deep. But now that there were another 2 feet of water, it became 4 or 5 feet deep. And a lot of people wanted to cross that creek to go to the railroad track because that was the only high place which were dry. People wanted to go to a dry place. And there was no way to cross because it was flowing so fast, it would carry you. So they made a raft, a large wooden piece, and they tied 4 ropes to the 4 corners, and 4 men were holding those ropes tight. Men on one side of the creek will start pulling, the other would start slowly letting go, and when the raft has come on this side, people will sit on it, and the other people start pulling, and both sides will keep the ropes tight, otherwise it would tilt. And one time it tilted. My grandmother and I were standing in line to get on the raft, and the people who got on the raft in front of us, the raft tilted and they were thrown into the water, and water carried them so fast, nobody knows what happened to them. I saw it. I can never forget it.
These are the kinds of things that nobody could protect you from seeing.
No.
And you were
I heard and saw so many things, even though I was well protected, but there's no way to protect when you're sitting in an open camp and your space is maybe 20 by 20, no more than a big room.
Mhm.
And in that big room, in that space, you have your bullock cart, your 5 animals, and your 12 humans.
That's a lot.
And then there's a cart next to you on this side, this next to this and next, and the people are talking, you are hearing everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing anything, you're seeing everything. And people used to talk about who got killed and when who got attacked all the time. And they're talking about in graphic details how the blood the flow, how this person was killed. My mother was killed like this, and the person is crying and telling the story. And I heard it all. But my elders kept trying to protect me from it. And then they would then say, oh, no, they would start talking about something else so that I can forget. But it stayed in my memory. I never forgot.
Perhaps even more would have stayed in your memory if they didn't make such efforts.
That's right. That's right. I could have been traumatized right there and then. Now I'm traumatized by the memory. At that time, it was the normal for me.
Well, children are resilient in a strange
Right.
way.
Right.
But when you saw this raft go under, you said you were next in line.
We were next in line.
That's crazy.
And we were so numb, so free of any feelings or any thinking. We were like zombies.
Mm.
So when the raft came back, they looked at what was happening, tried to rush to it, couldn't do anything. They pulled the raft back, and here's my grandmother and I getting on it.
I mean, that really strikes me, because if some normal person in normal times sees somebody, get carried
They will run away.
and killed, you're gonna stop, you're gonna think about it
Right.
for weeks, months.
Right.
Who knows? It's gonna stay on your mind. Here, you don't have 5 minutes to.
We have lost senses. We had no idea. Death didn't mean anything to us. Life didn't mean anything to us. We were just moving around like zombies. That's why I named this book the Flight of the Living Corpses. Living. Somebody wrote a poem who was leaving India. He felt like he was dead and just walking dead. And he said in Urdu, तेरे घर से एक जिंदा लाश उठ जाने को है. From your house, one living corpse is about to leave. That's where I got the idea of this. The zinda lash, living corpse.
Mm-hmm.
We were like living corpses. We had no feelings. We were just trying to get somewhere. Why? We did not know.
It's very hard to try to put oneself in such shoes if you haven't experienced this kind of thing.
And it lasted 4 months. 4 months. Living under God's open sky, on bare earth, exposed to all the elements. When it rained on us, we were sitting in the rain. When the sun shines, it's shining on us. And sun of August, Punjab, is 110 to 120 degrees. And we are sitting right in the open under the sun. And when in December we were in Pakistan, it was cold. We had no covers.
Hmm.
At night, it was very cold.
Especially if it's raining, yeah.
Mm.
So a little more about the camp, the train. Yeah, I think you had considered taking the train at this point, right?
Since the trains were leaving Ludhiana and going to Lahore, my grandfather said maybe the women and children can go on the train and be there safely. And God knows what's going to happen to us. So he sent the two granduncles, his two cousins, myself, my brother, my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother to the train station. We walked to the train station. I don't know how long it took, but we got there. We had no idea about train. We had never seen the train before. So we had no idea which train is going where. There was one train, they were slowly moving, and somebody said something about Pakistan, and we rushed and got into that train. We were the only one in the whole train. And then somebody said, hey, this is not going to Pakistan. And we jumped off. We were scattered all over the platform. By then, my big granduncle, Baba Mona, and he said, I'm done with this. This is too much nonsense. We are going back. Whatever happens, happens to all of us together. So he came back.
Interesting. But in hindsight, could that have been a good thing, not getting on that train?
It could be good and bad at the same time. Because if we got on the train, there was no guarantee that we will cross Amritsar alive. There were a lot of trains that were massacred in Amritsar. There was no guarantee. We could have arrived in Pakistan, but then what would we do in Pakistan? We did not know anybody. So it was better that we stayed together.
It turned out better.
Yeah,
but you guys didn't know that this was happening on the trains.
No, we did not know at that time.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we learned later on.
Mm-hmm. So your grandfather was making that decision. Maybe they should go, but he didn't have this information.
Yeah, there were a lot of army trucks that going by, people begging them to take the Pakistani army trucks, and people were begging them to take them with them. Some were taken. The most of them were rejected. My grandfather never asked anybody something like that. But he said, if the army trucks are going and the trains are going, train is open to us. Let's go try to take the train. But it didn't work out.
This thing about information is, for example, he just didn't know what was going on the trains, understandably. But like also just generally, when you decide to leave, it's like, okay, let's go to Pakistan. People didn't know where Pakistan was.
We had no idea.
People didn't know where the border was. Now, to help put it in perspective, now something like this happens. Everybody has some Wi-Fi connection. Everybody has a GPS. So for people,
Wi-Fi is in your lifetime.
Exactly. So for younger people listening, you can't just pull it up on your phone. Oh, there's Pakistan. Here's us. Okay, let's, I don't know, get some route. You can see, oh, we'll go on this road. You had no idea. And can you talk a little bit about that?
In my time, there was no telephone at all of any kind. Not to talk about cell phones, we didn't have any telephone of any kind. We didn't have any maps. There was no means of transportation other than the Bullock Carts. Some people have horses. We had never seen horses. Horse carts, We had not even seen horse carts. Uh, there were buses that were running by the road that was about 1.5 miles from our village. And some people took those buses and they came once a day, one bus a day. It was not very frequent. But we had no dealings with those buses. So we had absolutely no idea where anything was except the place that our elders had been. They had been to Ludhiana. They knew where Ludhiana was. Beyond that, they had no idea. After we reached Ludhiana, because they knew how to get there, but after Ludhiana, we just followed the caravans. We had no idea where we were going and which way we were going, and the caravans. Our caravan was told to go to Ferozpur, not to Amritsar. So we just followed the caravan.
And so news was being communicated mostly by word of mouth then? You would hear something, somebody says something. Maybe you see an army officer, you get some information.
No army officer came to us. It was, there's some movement. Somebody heard something. The movement. Hey, what's happening? Don't you know we are leaving? When are we leaving? Now. Okay, get ready. This is how it happened.
This is how you were in the camp. This
Right,
is how.
right.
How about before the camp, when you were finding out, oh, we are not in Pakistan, the border is somewhere else. Should we go here? Should we go there? You're hearing information.
No, we were only concerned about getting to Ludhiana. After Ludhiana, we didn't care. We were on the caravan, and caravan was moving, and we were moving with them. We didn't care where we were going.
Okay.
We knew. They know. Let's follow them.
It's interesting. So everyone who got to Ludhiana, presumably it was non-standard. But once you got to Ludhiana, you were part of a more organized refugee effort.
That's right.
To get people to
That's
Pakistan.
right.
It
Now-
wasn't organized until then.
Now there was word of mouth that we are leaving.
So one thing struck me that you said the village at this point has been scattered about. This is say you were making a movie. Hollywood wants to make a movie about this. If you want to make a compelling movie that people are going to feel something watching, you would have the same group of people before the partition. You'd follow them through the journey, all the difficulties, and then finally they cross the border together and you see everyone's story from beginning to end, this one group of people. It makes for a very powerful scene. That's how I would make a movie about it. But that's not what happened. People you grew up with, people you lived with in the village, everyone's scattered, everyone's separated. And now there isn't that. Now you're surrounded partially by strangers.
Hollywood movie is a plant. The director tells people where to go, where to sit, how to move, and you're going to be together because there's nobody else to interfere with them. This is a reality. This is not a Hollywood movie. Here, 20 million people were moving in both directions. Through Ludhiana, maybe a couple of million people passed. And when you get there, and people are coming in groups, and you get to the Ludhiana camp, and it's already full. Now you have to find a place to put your Bullock cart. You're not going to find a place to put 400 Bullock carts in one place. They have to find place here and there and there, and they're all over the place. Now the caravan starts moving. They cannot say, the village of Sabir Rahman's family goes first. No such thing. Everybody is each for himself.
True chaos.
Through chaos. We started moving early in the morning from the camp. Getting out of the camp took us maybe 6-7 hours. Getting out of the camp. Once you are on the road, now you are in the caravan, then you move with the caravan. But getting into the caravan, it took long time because you talk about traffic jam. This traffic jam was something you have never seen.
So the caravan has started. You have, it's your turn after 2 months to leave Ludhiana. And now you're heading where?
We were told you're going to Ferozpur. Ferozpur is 11 miles from Pakistan border. And we are going to go by Ferozpur and continue to the border. The caravan is patrolled by the army soldiers. In the city, there are army soldiers standing on both sides of the street. We went through the main street of the city, and there was one army officer who was carrying a gun on his shoulder and also carrying a gun on his belt. He was in uniform and had a stick in his hand. And he was running up and down, yelling at the caravan people, move fast, move fast, move fast. And stay in the middle of the road, stay in the middle of the street. And he saw a soldier standing on the side of the street with his gun sitting against the pole. And he was chewing on a sugar cane. He went to that police office, gave him an order, and even hit him with a stick and said, straighten up! And he straightened up very quickly. They threw away the sugar cane and picked up the gun. And as soon as mob walked away, he picked up the sugar cane and put down the gun. And he was so loud and so active and running around and they're telling people, stay in the middle of the street, keep moving, keep fast. And everybody said, why is he so rude? And somebody said, no, he's not rude. He's the only Muslim in this group. And he wants to protect you. He wants you to get out of the city as quick as possible because anything could happen in the city. Really? I can never forget that.
Anything could happen despite the explicit kind of army patrol.
Yeah, because some of the Hindu and Sikh soldiers were not caring. They had been assigned to stand there, like this one that I told you about, whose gun was resting against the pole and he was chewing on the sugar cane.
And so the violence that occurred, was it on both sides? Was it in some ways supported by the governments, or was it just that the governments couldn't prevent it?
Government either couldn't prevent it or did not try hard enough to prevent it, but it was not supported. There was not explicit support, but some of the leaders some of the political leaders were happy at it. Although they did not openly support it, they happy it and did not try to stop it.
I see. So even though the patrol was there, it was safer presumably than the path to Ludhiana, where that group of men
came to attack, that would be much harder now. Even with the Indian patrol, even if it wasn't perfect, it was still stop such thing that brazen.
At least people respected that. And also there was sort of an unwritten law that the road is protected. If somebody gets off the road, they could be dragged away and killed. So this army officer was insisting you stay in the middle of the road. Don't move right or left. Stay in the middle of the road. So our people in our family, one uncle was driving them, and the women and children were sitting on the cart, and the others were walking on either side, holding on to the cart sides. That's what my grandfather's instructions were. Put your hand on the cart and don't let go, so that you don't move away. So that's how we traveled.
Remind me, were you hidden from view, or were the women and children visible?
At this time, no. At this time, we were not hidden from the view. However, when we reached Ferozpur, Ferozpur was so dangerous that there was even a possibility that somebody could be attacked on the road. If a whole gang came and started attacking, they could reach the road. Especially if the women are visible, that could be an invitation. So what my grandfather did was he moved things around and created a cavity in the middle of the cart and made my grandmother, my mother and aunt, and the two of us, me and my brother, sit in the cart, in the cavity. On top of the cavity, he created sort of a roof. And on top of the roof, he put stuff to make sure that nobody has any idea there is a cavity underneath. On the top of the roof was one of my granduncles sitting. So this is my grandfather's planning. And we passed through and everybody else who was walking on the side was hanging on to the cart. And when we were passing by Ludhiana, by Ferozpur, my mother and my uncle Deen Muhammad had a conversation going on. Deen Muhammad outside, my mother inside. And she wanted to know because she had seen Ludhiana, Ferozpur before. Her mother was from Ferozpur. And so she knew about Ferozpur. She kept saying, are we in Ferozpur? We didn't go through Ferozpur. We go on the side. The road is on the side. And at one point, Deen Muhammad said, Ferozpur is behind us. My mother said, so soon? The trauma was so thick that we didn't even realize how long it took. And when we realized that we are out of danger, I suddenly realized, oh, it's over?
This is another example. There are even more in the book. Examples of your grandfather's kind of wisdom or foresight.
Right. Food is one.
Yeah. And this was not obviously widespread. Not everyone had this wisdom. So
I'm sure there were many others who did this kind of wisdom, but it wasn't very common.
And why? What do you think was happening there? Why do you think he had this?
He was a wise man. He was a wise man. He thought. He was thinking all the time. He was listening to what was being said and preparing for the obvious situations.
I guess not everyone had that quality.
Not everyone, but there's a lot of people who do.
Well, it's fortunate that that was
we
the
were
case.
very
You had
fortunate.
someone.
We
Yeah.
were very fortunate. I have been an admirer of my grandfather all my life.
Mm. So maybe at this point we're getting closer to the border. Are there things that you saw or experienced that you haven't really shared publicly for one reason or another? I'm not asking you to discuss them at this moment.
Yeah, there's one incident that traumatizes me. I have told you guys once or twice, and every time I told you, I broke down. Then all of you told me, don't ever tell that story again. It's written in the book, but I cannot tell it.
Yeah. It's I only ask just so that people understand, even though you've done so much to talk about it and write a book, there's still more that that as a 7-year-old maybe you don't notice, but even if you did notice, it's not all possible to discuss.
That's right.
Like even like I wonder, did you go through any villages that had been massacred, perhaps? Like
no.
Do you think that those villages you didn't come across them, or that your family realized that, oh, that's there, let's keep the kids away from?
There was no conscious effort on that. Every village that we passed by was empty. People had already gone, but they had their houses were stuffed with stuff. There a lot of food, lot of other things. So anything we needed, we could get. Water and food, even clothes. They had everything sitting in their houses. They just left the way we left, with bare necessities. We didn't see any village that had people in it.
So that's, but still, at this point, there have been, I think, 2 instances where you narrowly escaped something that would have ended.
Right.
The first were those protected by those 2 policemen, and
Right.
I believe you had said there were regular massacres in Ludhiana and outside when people were getting water, and I believe you missed the one by a few hours. Wasn't that right?
My family was very fortunate. We either got to a place after something bad had happened, or we just left the place before something bad happened. We kept hearing these stories all the time. We got some place and they said, oh, yesterday this happened here. Or we left some place and we heard few hours later that something happened. But we were very fortunate that we were saved every time.
So at this point, you have passed Ferozpur. Now maybe we talk about the last stretch. Yeah, because you're 11 miles, you said, right?
Yeah, 11 miles. In 1947, the river Satluj, which flows by Ferozpur, about 11 miles from Ferozpur, used to branch into 2 branches. And 2 branches created an island between them. And the few miles down, the branches used to join and become one river again. They had built bridges on each branch. And the first branch was totally in India. The second branch formed the border between India and Pakistan. When we crossed the first the bridge and entered the island, people started rushing like crazy. At that time, I had no idea why, but now I know, because they were sensing some kind of danger on one hand, and they were sensing safety of Pakistan on the other hand. So they were saying, it's right there, let's rush. So they were driving their carts very fast, people were running, and we crossed the river, the second branch. After we crossed the second branch, we were in Pakistan. The situation in the island was so horrible that if somebody asked me, what's hell, I would say that island that day. That to me is hell. And situation in Pakistan was so relaxed, so peaceful, that somebody asked me, what's heaven? I would say, is the road in Pakistan after the bridge.
It's quite an image.
Right.
So what was Pakistan like once you crossed that bridge? What was the difference before and after?
Now the Bullock Carts are moving at their own. The animals are not being driven. They're moving at their own speed. People are no longer driving anything. People are no longer rushing. They are talking to each other and having very relaxed conversation. Women are talking to each other. Children are running all over the place. That was not the case in India. Children are being held on for dear life. They were never allowed to go a yard from your, stay with me. And they were holding on the children. Now the children were running all over the place. I was running all over the place. I crossed the road. On the left side of the road was a water channel. Along the water channel was a row of trees. Across the water channel was crops. I ran into the crops. Nobody stopped me. That's how relaxed everybody was.
That's a huge contrast.
Right. On the other side of the road was a railroad track. That's where we saw the train going in the opposite direction. And people in it was huddled inside, scared and terrified. And somebody said, hey, there goes a Muslim train. And somebody else corrected him, no, we are in Pakistan now. They are Hindus and Sikhs leaving Pakistan. And they are in the same situation here as Muslims were on the other side.
And that's a very interesting thing to see.
Yeah, that's the only thing I saw on the other side.
About the refugees?
About the refugees.
On that bridge, there weren't Hindus or Sikhs that you remember that were walking the other way?
No.
There was only people crossing into Pakistan from there?
That's right.
Really?
I don't know. That's a very good question. Where were the people going the other way?
Yeah.
Because the road was only Muslims.
Mm.
I never thought of that.
Is it possible that you just didn't notice the opposite traffic?
No, there was no opposite traffic.
Ah.
I clearly remember there was no opposite traffic.
That's interesting.
Maybe they all went through Amritsar.
Maybe. I guess, well, actually, because the efforts were organized after Ludhiana by some officials, some whatever, that maybe that bridge was part of some organized effort, and maybe they had some other organized effort on the other side, and they decided, let's not cross here because we don't know what'll happen, maybe.
Crossing could be a problem.
Mm-hmm. So then, looking in Pakistan, what did you experience, was there some governmental organization, some effort, some thing now that you could consult now that you had finally reached Pakistan?
No, absolutely nothing. Absolutely. Now that I know how refugees are received or handled, I would have expected some welcome centers, some people saying, let me guide you where to go, here's some food for you, or anything. Absolutely nothing like that happened. Our heavenly feeling on the road after the bridge lasted until we reached the city of Kasur, which is 20 miles from the border. When we got there, we were shaken back to realization. We are refugees. Nobody likes us. The people there did not come to us to ask us how we are and what can they do for us. They actually were contemptuous of our presence. They looked at us with dirty looks.
Really?
Yes. And we didn't ask for them for anything. We didn't care about them. They didn't care about us. There was no interaction at all. Nobody came to us to ask us if we need help. Government did not.
Individuals
People did not know. I don't remember a single person coming to us.
This is very, like you said, when you hear about refugee crisis, you might have some expectation once they cross the border, that might be there. And can you speculate? I mean, I think that's a natural instinct. You would, it's not a modern thing. I think even then you would expect there'd be some help, some organize. Oh, here they're coming. After such a journey, why do you think this was not there?
My own assessment is that we had been under colonial rule for so long. Formally for 90 years, but informally for over 200 years. The colonial rule had trained some locals to be their assistants in ruling the country. And what they taught them was, don't care about people. Absolutely insensitive to the people's needs and feelings. That's what the colonial rulers were, and that's what those who were trained by them were. So these were the people now in charge. They didn't care about helping people.
That's interesting.
They still don't. In Pakistan, the government is still not people-oriented.
And you see this as a direct extension of the
colonialism.
That's an interesting insight, but that's somewhat unique to this particular refugee crisis, because they're not always like this, like after a colonial rule or something like that. So this is perhaps difficult to understand for people. It still is a little strange to me that you wouldn't, at least individuals wouldn't see and try to help. You think, I understand what you're saying then, I guess, about the claim, about the officials having been trained this way by the British, say, but even the individuals.
That's what surprised. I have heard stories about people say, my family came and somebody such and such help. They might be true, but not in my experience. I didn't find anybody to help.
And that's a very surprising fact. I don't think people would expect. So So you made it to Kasur and you realized that you still have some ways to go.
Right. We are still we're still living on God's bare earth, under God's open sky, exposed to all the elements of nature, and nobody is there to help us. We are still on our own.
And so at this point, you had some organized caravan to get you to the border. Now, how do you organize your movements, your decisions?
The caravans are still there and they're still moving. And I think now everybody's trying to go to Lahore. Lahore is a big city, and they're hoping that in Lahore we'll find some help. But when we reached Lahore, it turned out not only we didn't find any help, but the authorities in Lahore said, you cannot stay here. If they didn't want us to stay here, they should have stopped us before entering Lahore, because we entered Lahore at the end of the day. They should have stopped us before entering Lahore and said that tomorrow you can cross Lahore. But they didn't stop us. But they wouldn't let us stop in Lahore. We entered Lahore at the end of the day, and there were 20 miles to cover. 20 miles is a long way. It is. We travel at maybe 2.5 miles an hour. 20 miles would take 8 hours to 10 hours. And it did take 8 to 10 hours. We got across Lahore at the end of the day, end of night. We traveled all night.
It's a serious lack of planning or compassion or whatever.
Lack of compassion.
To not think in terms of, let's make these people, because it's happening every night, if they will realize after the first mistake, probably, we should probably stop them at some point.
That's right.
It seemed like it just wasn't maybe a factor in their thinking.
I don't know if they ever woke up to this or not, but at least in our case, no. We did. They won't let us stop until we reach Shadra, which is across the river Ravi on the other side of the city, over 20 miles from the entry to the exit.
And so you reached there, and did you find anything in Lahore to help you go to your next step or find out what your next step?
Absolutely nothing. We were still on our own and just aimlessly moving, just kept moving. We would stop right on the road, and next morning we'll stop moving again. Sometime we will stop right on the road and say, let's stay here one more day. Where are we going? We have no idea where we are going. So we kept moving along. From after you cross Lahore into Sheikhupura, which is the district, and Shadra is the first city, from there are 3 ways you can take. One way goes to Islamabad, which is now Islamabad. There was no Islamabad at that time. One goes through Sheikhupura to Sargodha. And one goes left of Sheikhupura straight to the city called Lailpur at that time, is now called Faisalabad. We took the middle road. Just kept going towards Sargodha. After Shadra comes Sheikhupura. We passed Sheikhupura. After Sheikhupura comes a city that used to be called Chudkana at that time, is now called Farukabad. After that comes a city called Pindipatiya. After that comes a city called Sukheki. By the time we reached there, my grandfather said, I don't know where we're going. Let's just stay here. We stayed there for many days.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, my grandfather decided that we should investigate where the rest of our people are. At this time, although the caravan has split into so many pieces, there were still about 10 families together. There was still 10 families.
How many families were there starting off? Just
more than 100.
More than
100. These 10 families were in Sukheki trying to figure out what to do. And then somebody came to us and said, I have heard from such and such that there are some people of our village who has reached a village called Yatri. And one of our leaders, one of our village leaders, elder, is there, and he's asking us to come here. And he said he has place for us. My grandfather talked to other people, and they created a search party. My uncle Yusuf was part of that search party. There's a story in Bible about Moses sending a search party of 12 people to Canaan to find out how are the things over there, should we go there or not. When that search party came back, 2 people said we should go there, the other 10 said we should not. This is what happened to our search party. Our search party went there. I don't know how many people were besides my uncle Yusuf. There might be 3 or 4 people. My uncle Yusuf and one other person said, let's go there. The other said, no, we're not going there. So the family did not. My grandfather said, my son says go there, we are going there. So that's how. So we turned around and went to that place.
You had to backtrack a little bit.
I had to backtrack to the city called Churkana, and then turn right 9 miles to the village Yatri.
And that's where you finally
That's where we settled
down.
Finally, we had a roof. In the movie called Red River, John Wayne started a journey carrying a lot of cattle to a market. And along the way, they were living in the jungle with no roof. And when they finally reached there, Montgomery Clift is in the office of the trader who is going to buy their cattle. And he's looking up. The trader said, what are you looking? He said, the roof. We have not been under roof for a month. We hadn't been under roof for 4 months. And now we were under roof.
4 months.
Great feeling. Great feeling. We have a roof.
But the place itself was needed some work, I recall, right?
It was very dirty, very cluttered. And my uncle said, I don't care how dirty it is. It's a big place and it has enough space for all of us. We will clean it. We did. We cleaned it, made it livable.
How? So you went from India, your ancestral land, home, and now you're in a different land, in a different building you call home. I doubt these were completely equal, living standards or something.
It was not. One big thing that people don't understand, and I have a feeling I might be one of the few people or the only person who understands this. Punjab villages had an organization, a layout. They had a residential area and the farm area, the farm equipment and animal area. And they never mixed the animals never came into the residential area. When we reach the Pakistan and finally had a place, people ask the officials who allotted us this place, where are our animal? Where are our barns? They said, what barns? I said, where we keep our animal. Keep them with yourself. The official did not understand this organization because they lived in the cities. They had no idea what village layout was. And as a result, now all over Punjab, animals and people are living together. This was not the case.
Yeah. That's one big kind of lifestyle change.
There's a big lifestyle change.
Because it changes the layout of the cities too,
Right.
and the kind of implicit sense that the town has.
Right.
Did you get as much land as you had?
Originally they decided that we are going to give 1 acre for each member of the family to start with. Then we are going to investigate between the two governments, Pakistan government and India government. India government will check the records and say, Mr. So-and-so owned so many acres when he left. And Pakistan government will check their record, and then this Pakistan will send their record to the India. India will send their record to Pakistan. When our record came, then the Pakistan government sent us information. You are owed so many acres. In addition, and you already have so many, the balance will be given to you. Unfortunately, by then the villages were all allotted. There was no more land left for the balance. So people were looking for the balance. That's how we ended up in Rajanpur. Because we didn't have enough land there. Rajanpur had enough land. So they said, come to Rajanpur, we'll give you all the land you need.
How much time was between that?
17 years.
17 years from going to Yatri, from settling in Yatri to finally having the resolution.
Right.
Okay, this is how much land you had.
That's right.
17 years. Crazy
17
amount
years.
of times. That's a whole phase of life. Like it's...
I know, but there's a positive side to it. Refugees generally don't get the situation that we were in. We were refugees on east and west, and going from east to west and west to east, and leaving empty lands behind. And when those who were coming in, they were able to get houses and lands, even if they were not as good as the one they left behind, but they were able to get something and get settled. Most refugees don't get settled.
That's true.
Most refugees don't get settled. They remain refugees for the rest of their life.
I hadn't thought about that actually. That didn't occur to me, that because they were farmers on one side, farmers on the other, you could roughly have an exchange.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not generally the case.
That's right.
That's very interesting. Once you started settling down in Yatri, what was life like just now living there? What was that like?
It was very, very poverty-stricken life. We had traveled over 4 months and we had lost everything. Everybody had one pair of shoes. We didn't have multiple pairs of shoes. Everyone had just one pair of shoes. Maybe my grandfather had 2 pairs of shoes, one formal, one informal. But most everyone else just have, and we lost those shoes on the way. Many of them had lost their shoes, and those who did not lose their shoes were torn and with holes and etc.
Mm-hmm.
The clothes they were wearing were also torn up, and they didn't have any money to buy new clothes because the Indian army has taken all the money we had. So now, although we had reached something, we didn't have any money to buy anything. We didn't have any farm equipment. We had animals to pull the plows, but had no plows. We had no farm equipment because those who where we got there was no farm equipment there. Now we have to obtain the farm equipment. Our water buffalo had died on the way, so we didn't have any milk either. Milk is, we don't go to store to buy milk in those days. Milk is produced at home. We didn't have any milk. 2 little children, no milk. So it's a very, very helpless situation.
And
although we had a roof, but we didn't have any beds. We didn't have any sheets to spread on beds. We didn't have any covers to take. They said the middle of the winter, we didn't have any covers. So we were still sleeping on the floors with barely any covers. And then my father came.
Can you talk about that?
Then my father. We must have reached. We must have reached Jatri at the end of December. My father came in early February. Somehow we survived that month and a half. But my father was given the choice, join Indian Army or join Pakistani Army or take retirement. He said, I want retirement. As retirement, he was given some money. He felt rich. I have money. I'm going to go into business. I have enough money to start a business. But when he saw his family, nobody has clothes, nobody has shoes, and there's no farm equipment, there's no milk, and they have 4 animals, 4 bullocks, but no feed for them. So he started buying things, clothes for everybody, shoes for everybody. He bought a water buffalo for milk. You cannot grow feed overnight. So he bought an acre of feed from somebody. So that we used to go there and get the feed for the animals. So by the time he was done with all this, he ran out of money. Now he said, he came home saying, I'm never going to work for anybody anymore. I'm going to go into business. He had no choice but to go back to work for the government.
How did he find you?
I wanted to ask him that, and he might have told us when we were little children. We used to listen to his stories attentively, forget them the next day. I wish I had written them down. One connection I know, there was one village in the district Sahiwal called Chak number 19. It used to be called Chak number 19, the army soldiers' village, Faujiyanwala. And he knew that there were people related to him who were in that village. He knew about that village. That's where he went and asked them, where is my family? then I have a feeling he went from place to place where anybody said there might be information there, might be information there. But that detail he must have told us, but I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
How he found us, it took him maybe 10 days, but he found us.
10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And did he start in Garle? In the original town? Where did the 10 days start? Where did he start looking?
Chakunni, Chak 19.
Oh, from there it took 10 days. I see. I guess he surmised that you were no longer in India somehow. Or did he actually have to go there and realize?
That he had been told in Chak 19.
Okay.
He had been told that the whole village is in Pakistan now.
Where was Chak 19 again, you said?
It's in the district Sahiwal.
And this is in India?
No, in Pakistan. In Pakistan.
So after he came back from Burma, he was going to...
From Rangoon, he flew to Bombay.
Mm-hmm.
From Bombay, he flew to Karachi. Karachi, he went to Lahore. I do not know whether he flew or took a train.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Lahore. From Lahore, he went to this place, Chak 19,
mm-hmm.
Which is something like 100 miles from Lahore.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And from there, he started the search. All the details I do not know,
mm-hmm.
but within about 10 days, he found.
Okay.
He was in Yatri.
Now, I don't know if he shared this with you, but I'm just trying to imagine how he must have felt, like knowing that his family had to endure this.
He was heartbroken. But at least he was happy that everyone is intact. I can take care of your clothes. I can take care of your shoes. I'm glad you're here.
Mm-hmm. It must have. I imagine
nobody died. I almost died with cholera. Your father almost died with smallpox, but we both survived.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about the smallpox?
No? No.
But
that's the second story I cannot talk about.
I do think it's
I have written it. You can read it. I've written all the details, but I cannot talk about it.
It's something generally people wouldn't necessarily think about, like the disease, the outbreaks. There was cholera, there was even pink eye, there was malaria.
All the details are in my book.
Exactly, yes. But so that is kind of the end of the journey, so to speak. You're settled in India and now you're semi-settled in Pakistan in Yatri. And so that's in some sense, it's the end. But
that's the end.
In many senses, it is not
beginning
the end.
Of new life, but the end of the journey.
The end of the journey. But it continues to
But the journey never ended.
Mm-hmm.
From Yatri to Karachi, from Karachi to Balochistan, from Balochistan back to Hyderabad, from Hyderabad to Washington, D.C., then to College Park. Journey never ended.
Mm-hmm. Once a refugee, always a refugee.
Right.
I think that's something that maybe people don't appreciate. When you left India, you were surrounded by families you had known for generations.
Mm-hmm.
Generations.
That's right.
And when you come to now Yatri, maybe few families are with you, but most of the families are not people that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that occurred to me was that, it's hard to get to know somebody. Usually you don't really get to know people, so to speak. In this scenario, you're born into a village. Everyone already knows everyone. You just have to get to know everyone. And everyone has reputation. But when you get to Yatri, you're surrounded by strangers, which now you need to get to know. And I wonder if there were some surprises because you don't know people's background, their history for generations. You're getting to know them. Were there any surprises?
In Yatri, no. But where my maternal grandfather stayed, there were surprises. There, we can talk about that. But in Yatri is a very unique village. I have not seen a village like that anywhere else in Pakistan or anywhere else. Yatri is a very large village. Village's size is decided by how much land the village owns.
Mm-hmm.
And it owns a lot of land. There were a lot of satellite hamlets around Yatri. I know at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know at least 6 of them. There might be more. By the time we got there, Yatri was full. They all occupied. There was no place for anyone else in Yatri. So we had to settle in the hamlets. We got the farthest hamlet. That was about 1.5 miles from the village. And in that hamlet, there were 2 families from another location near our location in Punjab, about 7 miles from our location. And they were already there. The rest of them, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other families that settled there. They were all from our village.
Mm-hmm.
So these 2 were outsiders. They became insiders very quickly. The 6 of them were insiders. So for us, it was not strange.
That's very remarkable.
But inside the village, the main village, we knew nobody.
Mm-hmm.
They were all strangers because they were, the village had people from Ferozpur, people from Amritsar, people from all over the place. And there were a lot of people from our village also, but there were people from all over the place.
Were there any odd tensions, awkward moments, or something getting to know
I have
these
no
people?
idea. That's in the village.
Mm-hmm.
The village people will know about that.
Mm-hmm.
We never went to the village. We lived in our hamlet.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's interesting. It's a very. I didn't know that you were basically surrounded by people who knew one another.
Right.
And that's fortunate,
Yeah.
I think.
It was fortunate for us because we were all, and these 2 families who were already there became very close to us very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They were from the same general area where we came from, not from our village, but they were closer to the river. They lived closer to the river.
I see. Okay.
The river that we crossed.
Mm-hmm. Satluj, right?
Yeah.
Satluj.
They crossed once in a boat and the second time on a bridge. We crossed it twice.
Yeah. Yes. So now if we reflect, there were some moments of violence or anything you saw. We touched on some of them, but what do you still recall? Because I ask because I think those would make the biggest impressions in a child's mind. And is there any?
As I said, I heard everything and saw everything because my elders could not close my ears and eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And the noise and scenes were all around us, along the way and in the camp and everywhere. But they did not let me think about those situations during the journey. But later on, when people started talking about what happened when Pakistan was made, and I heard people saying things, and I suddenly realized they're talking about something that I saw with my own eyes. and what they're saying is not totally accurate. I saw the real thing and I started remembering. And when I remembered, and then I also read in about other information, the more general information, how many people were involved in the travel, how many people uprooted, how many homeless. That information came from general information, which I learned. But what I saw and heard came back to my memory. Two things that I want to tell you. One is, once you have been disturbed from a location, it's very difficult to settle down again, no matter how settled the conditions are. I have always felt like a refugee. I've always felt wherever I went, I didn't belong. So that has caused me a lot of problems. Stability in life is very important. And I think I lost the stability. I don't know if the rest of my family did or not, but I definitely lost stability. No matter where I lived, I never felt I belonged there. I kept longing to go back. And the second thing was the trauma. The trauma of the situation was always with me, but I never realized it. Because I remembered everything, and I must have felt the impact of it, but did not realize it until that rabbi asked me a question after I had spoken about the refugee experience, in which I also said something about my experience. He said, "How did you overcome the trauma?" I didn't even know how to answer his question. I think I messed up the answer, but that got me to thinking. And I finally realized I never overcame that trauma. I cannot talk about death. My own death, I can talk about all the time. I cannot talk about somebody else's death. I cannot watch war movies. I cannot watch horror movies. My wife, your aunt, loved to watch horror movies and war movies. I never sat down with her to watch them. When our children were born, Rahi, Ruby, and started growing up, she made them sit with her. And they love to watch horror movies. I can never. Mm-hmm. I cannot see a dead person. The only dead persons in my life I saw was my father, my mother, and my wife. People usually go, they see the face, they open the casket, and the people want to see. I never do that. I cannot. I'm so traumatized. I never realized it until the rabbi asked me that question, got me to thinking. Now I know why I feel about things the way I do.
How many years ago did he ask you this?
8 years ago.
8 years ago?
2017.
It's a long time to have this implicitly there,
right,
without
realizing it.
Without reflecting on it.
Yeah.
Well, you said you speak obviously for yourself and how it affected you, but I can't imagine.
I'm sure it had impact on everybody, maybe not as much as mine, but I'm sure it had some impact. And the stability, I never had stability in my life, because in the first place, my father kept me moving.
Mm-hmm.
I started school in India. I went to 2 schools for the first grade because my mother kept moving from one village to the other. Whichever village she was in, that's where I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came to Pakistan. My father put in the school in Jatri, then cholera broke out. And he sent me to stay with my Nana, my maternal grandfather. That's where I finished 3rd and 4th grade. Then I moved to Karachi. Finished 5th grade and he sent me back to Faisalabad. I finished 6th grade there, came back to Karachi. 7th and 8th grade, then he sent me back to Punjab. 9th grade in one high school and 10th grade in another high school. So I never had stability in my life.
Mm-hmm. If we look at the elders, they also had this experience where everything was upended. In some ways, being a child, you're more sensitive to some things, and I imagine you're less sensitive to some things, just
Right.
natural. But my thought was that, when you leave places or things, but not on your own terms,
Mhm.
I think it does leave a kind of permanent agitation.
Does.
Like there's a story about Miles Davis. Some police officer mistreated him. Basically, he was already a famous musician, and
Mhm.
he was mistreated.
Mhm.
And apparently this bothered him the rest of his life. Like, he would always remember that police officer that had mistreated him. Just one instant, probably a few minutes or whatever. But it left a permanent thing on him. And I think that there were many things here that maybe a kid wouldn't process the same way, but an adult would have processed different way. Like there were moments of violence. There were moments of disease. People almost dying. Others experienced that for you, and they experienced that would affect them. There'd be going from living standard life and then going into such living conditions as an adult that will affect. And then like moments like the Indian Army came and just rob you blind. You have adults there. They want to protect everyone. But in that moment,
They're unable to.
Completely helpless.
Mhm.
And that feeling, I imagine, if I try to empathize with their situation, that if you're one type of person, kind of living stable enough life, haven't witnessed too much crazy stuff, you have a certain naivety about you, perhaps. But once this happens, and you feel that helplessness, you feel how powerless you are, I think maybe you turn into a different kind of person once you know that. And I'm wondering if there's any examples you can remember, maybe people saying things, or maybe observations of you of how the adults maybe changed before and after this.
The way I described, I think I'm now realizing at a very advanced age, although 20 million people crossed the border, almost 2 million people were killed, some by people, some by diseases, some by trains. But I never saw any dead person. I never saw anybody being killed in front of my eyes. And when cholera broke out, a lot of people died. I never saw anybody dying. And then when smallpox broke out, a lot of people died. I never saw anybody dying. But I heard about it all the time. I heard people talking about somebody died today, somebody died today. That village was attacked and so many people were killed. And then they would give graphic description how they were killed. I heard all of that. That's what is in my mind. I never saw any death, but I heard about it so much, and I can't get it out of my mind.
It was when you were saying how it affected you, your inability to like look at this thing. It's that's I was trying to understand, but now it's making more sense.
Right.
Like it's almost when you hear about how bad a thing is, how some terrible thing is always happening, yeah, without even seeing it, I think that makes. I think I can understand that you don't want to see it now.
Right.
You know,
I don't want to see it.
Yeah, this thing you've heard so much about.
Yeah.
It's
my wife,
you
your aunt, loved to read about these things. The serial killers was her favorite subject. If the Ted Bundy wrote a book, she had to buy that book. I can't even think about it.
I'm beginning to understand as you've elaborated why that may be. So if you compare, maybe, I mean, is it possible to comment on who do you think was most? It's a reductionist question, most or least, but who was impacted more, you think? The children who traveled or the adults?
I never talked to them, so I do not know. But I think adults would remember it. There is a very famous poet by the name Munir Niazi. He's from our area. We are from Hoshiarpur originally, the Indian part where we lived. The Hoshiarpur is a district like Howard County, Montgomery County. Hoshiarpur is a district. We lived south of the district. Munir Niazi is from the north of the district, and he's much older than me. I don't know whether he's still living or not, but he was born in 1928, so he's 12 years older than me. I have read his poetry, and I can see the trauma in his poetry. I have a feeling he was impacted. If he was impacted, then a lot of other people were impacted too.
He's a poet, though, so he can put it to words that other people cannot. So that's interesting. Within your elders, did they perhaps make it a point not to discuss?
Yes, they make a point not to discuss.
Can you elaborate on why they might have made that choice?
I have no idea. I have no idea, but they usually don't talk about those things. And when I was writing this book, and when I went back a couple of times and told them I'm going to write it, and I started asking them if you remember this, if you remember this, their comment was, "You remember a lot. We don't remember as much." They don't want to remember.
You think they remember?
I think they remember. How can they not remember? Deen Muhammad was at that time 24 years old. 23 years old.
Really?
Chacha Yusuf was 26. My mother was 26. And even Chacha Suleiman was 17. And Chacha Rahmatullah was 15. They remember. They don't want to remember. If you talk to Chacha Rahmatullah, who is now not living, I used to talk to him. He only remembered good things. He used to say, I used to have a Sikh friend by the name such and such. He lived in such and such village. I used to visit him. as a Hindu friend in such and such village. He had a lot of Hindu friends, a lot of Sikh. That's all he wants to remember.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to remember what happened on the journey. I think they're protecting themselves. Now they're all dead, but in their life, I try to talk to them. They were not too anxious to talk about it.
Perhaps that's something that adults can do that children cannot.
That's right.
That adults can make
I
narratives.
didn't want to talk about it either. It were you guys who they forced me to.
Yes. Are you glad that we forced
yes,
your hand?
I'm glad I finally wrote the story.
What about it are you glad about?
That the story is there, and even if nobody else reads it, my family will read it. They would know what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is history. We need to know it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I wanted to read a certain passage just from the book. It goes back to something you had mentioned earlier, but I thought it was interesting to think about empathy during the journey.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, perhaps miserable times bring people closer together, at least at the outset of the misery. This is what happened with our people. The whole village became one large family. Every member cared for everyone else and was willing to help whenever the need arose. And the need arose more frequently than anyone could have imagined. When misery just continues in a never-ending fashion, that brotherly feeling, that closeness, begins to dissipate. Humans can take only so much. In our case, the misery not only continued, seemingly forever, it just kept on becoming more intense and more unbearable. It became increasingly miserable as time continued to stretch with no light at the end of the tunnel. This kind of experience is not something that people have experienced. People don't experience this kind of a journey where your compassion necessarily kind of runs out in this way, and you're kind of, how long is that compassion going to run? Like a few days, few weeks, not 4 months. So after that runs out, people are kind of running on fumes. They're running on empty. And I think that before you're tested in these harsh ways, it's easy to hold on to certain idealistic, perhaps naive notions about, who am I, or what are people like, human nature. And they're easy to hold on to until the cost of holding on to them becomes astronomical. Once you have experienced, you can't hold on to naivety in the face of experiences. Are there things that you know about, or that you, truths or something of that nature, that wisdom that is lost on people all around the world who don't have this story of?
I'm sure there are others who have gone through similar experiences, the concentration camps and constant bombing of areas, etc. But I really wanted to call this journey the flight of the zombies, because we in time became zombies. Because when the misery became unbearable, and then no end was in sight, we became mechanical dolls, the mechanical instruments. We were just moving without any feeling, without any expectations, without any complaints or anything. We had no feelings. And that's what a zombie is. This is what became after maybe a week after we left home. Especially at the time when we were stuck in the mud after we were robbed and we were on our way to Ludhiana. It's 34 miles from the river to Ludhiana. I'm sure that mud was no more than a couple of miles. The rest of the road must have been fine. But I don't remember the rest of the road. Only remember the mud. And the mud was so horrible that now people were mechanically acting. They were not really trying to help each other. They did what had to be done.
And my question, I guess, is after you have experienced that, you have to become this kind of zombie. You have to dispense with your normal expectations about, I will have a roof, I will have food, I'll have some nice clothes, or someone. Once you have to dispense with all those things and become a zombie, then on the other side, now you have again a roof, you begin doing quote unquote normal things. What are those permanent changes that occur after having had to become a zombie once?
There are some who are able to overcome everything and forget everything. But most are not able to overcome. They may learn lessons and try to consciously try to change their life, but they carry the trauma with them the rest of their life. Even if they suppress the trauma, like I have tried to do, to sort of try to forget it, but the trauma is there. It makes you act and behave in certain ways that you don't intend to. So there are, the lessons are, be conscious of other people's suffering, but we are not. I haven't found. Again, we go back to the 80-20 rules. Most people are conscious to other people's suffering, but they are usually unable to help. Those who are not unconscious of other people's suffering have the power, and they are able to continue to prolong those suffering. And I have no answer for that.
Mm-hmm. This trauma, though, that people carry, how does it end up manifesting itself in the way people act and behave?
They change their behavior.
They change their behavior.
Some people may become angry and take it out on others. Some people may become just passive. And it definitely changes their behavior.
Did you notice?
I noticed myself.
In yourself?
In myself.
Did you notice in others?
I don't have stability. There are people in Pakistan who are refugees who have done horrible things. So maybe they are acting out of their anger.
But within the adults that you knew, they didn't make these things outwardly visible to you in a way that you could detect.
Yeah.
But you're sure they were there, those effects?
I'm sure they were there. They just try to forget them.
Avoidance.
Yes.
Lashing out. That's maybe some of that passivity that you were Do you think people went a little bit passive in response to
Right.
those events?
Right.
Yeah. That's a tough way to live,
Mhm.
because associated with that passivity is a numbness, I would say.
It's a life lost. It's a whole life lost. There's no stability in the life, and you just keep on searching for something that's not there. And I myself just keep longing. I'm not happy in America. I want to go back to Pakistan, but I cannot because Pakistan will not accept me now either.
And the village that perhaps you are longing for no longer exists.
The village I'm longing for no longer exists because in 2017, I took a trip from Lahore to Kasur. I wanted to see where we passed. Nothing is the same. The whole thing is different.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find anything I could recognize.
Mm-hmm.
We traveled on a one-lane country road through the wilderness, farmland. Now we were traveling in a 4-lane divided highway.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing is the same anymore.
It's perhaps it's something like trying to find some closure or resolution with the situation, but
You cannot.
It's not possible.
It's not. I read an article in Washington Post back in 1968. I didn't save it. I tried to find it again. I could not. But it was an East European refugee who came to America and settled down here, became American. He wrote that you have come to new land and you can never belong there. But you also cannot go back to your old land because it's entirely different now. That's the way I feel.
You feel this way perhaps twofold for the first migration.
I feel it, yeah.
And the second migration
yeah.
from India to Pakistan when you were 7, and then to here.
Right.
In your 20s, I guess. Right. It was
I
later.
was 24.
24, I see. And so one question then, after having experienced all of this, there must be some things that you could not do or experience because of the fact of the partition. On the other hand, there are some things that you would have done that you would not have pursued without the experience of the partition. Do any examples come to mind of this?
Partition created the trauma, but also created opportunities. We ended up in Karachi. We might not have ended up in Karachi if there was no partition. My father was a brilliant student. He did very good in high school, but not just short of the scholarship level. So he couldn't get scholarship, he couldn't go to college. I went to college because my father was able to send me there because my father was living in Karachi. So there were some opportunities that the situation created that may not have been available if the situation were not there. But I would prefer stability over trauma, even if I was a farmer today in Hoshiarpur. I would prefer that than all that I got with the trauma.
Mhm.
Without the trauma, I would prefer what I have today. But with the trauma, I don't want it.
That's an example of opportunity
Right.
that you had there.
Mhm.
But how about in America, where you spent most of your life? Has that experience here made you do some things, or made you unable to do some things here in
Yes,
America?
it has made me do things that I should not have done, and made me unable to do things I would have wanted to do. And I came to America, and because of me, a lot of my relatives came to America, and they are happy. I'm not.
Your younger brothers,
Mm.
two of them, were born in Pakistan
Right.
afterwards, so they didn't experience this. And my father was too, so
Even your
young.
father does not remember anything.
At 2 years, it's
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
So, are there examples that of what you said? That things you shouldn't have done that you did, or things that you wanted to do but you couldn't in America?
The stability, lack of stability caused me. I kept jumping from place to place.
Mm-hmm.
I started working with Black & Decker. I should have stayed there. I became uneasy with the situation, and they said, I want to get out. So I bought a 7-Eleven store and got out of Black & Decker.
Mm-hmm.
Then 7-Eleven store, I had to give that up, started building houses. Then the building houses became a problem. It was not stable in anything. Those who have been working in a job for many, very long time have pensions, have 401k. I have nothing. I don't have anything.
And this you attribute to the lack of stability.
Lack of stability.
So there was a lack of stability.
I was always unhappy with my situation. I always wanted to change my situation. And I kept on changing it.
What did you think when you changed it? That this will address something.
This will be better. Now I'll be happy.
Ah.
I was not happy there either.
And
I never realized that this was the trauma that's causing this until the rabbi asked me that question.
So perhaps in a sense, what you were trying to escape was
the trauma.
Was that feeling?
Yeah.
That was implicit,
right?
Not explicitly known to you, and guiding that those switches, those changes.
The trauma was unknowingly part of my life.
Isn't it interesting that 77, you would have been 8 years ago? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That up until 70 years,
mm-hmm.
To become explicitly aware of something like that.
Yes.
Isn't that remarkable?
It is.
Can you say something about that? I mean,
I felt about things. Why I felt about things, I did not know.
Did you not question, or were you?
No, I never questioned why I feel about these things. I was there.
Were you afraid of the answer, perhaps?
Subconsciously, maybe.
Well, it was all subconscious.
Yeah, it was all subconscious.
That's.
If I were aware of it consciously, then I would have questioned it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was not aware of it consciously.
Is that a more general pattern of where people don't question what they feel, or do you think that this is something that was exacerbated by the experience?
I'm not a psychologist, so I cannot say, but I would guess it is a general pattern.
I would guess that, if we're guessing, I would guess that the severity of the of the negative experiences in life are proportional in some sense to how unwilling you will be to question them, because the cost to doing so is potentially larger.
I would agree.
So those are effects that you experienced as someone directly involved in this event.
Mm-hmm.
I am now curious because these things don't stop with one person. I mean, so what are the effects of this partition that have trickled down to the generations like me and my cousins, for example, that we may not be consciously aware of?
I think you are impacted by your parents' experience, your elders' experience. So I'm sure I carry more of it than your father does. Your father also has felt some of it, and the lack of stability was part of his life also. Although your uncle, both younger uncles, they were very stable in Karachi. I traveled a lot more than your father did, but he also traveled some. The later travels were his choice, but forced travels are in Pakistan when you start a school in Karachi and then suddenly you're told, now you're going to go to Punjab and live with your grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And after you finish there, you're sent back to Karachi. That has an impact.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go through this maybe 6-7 times. He had to go through it twice. So that does have an impact. That you're living with your mother and father and going to school every day. And suddenly your grandfather comes and says, can I take him with me? And your father says, yeah, take him.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a very pleasurable thing on the surface, but does have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And then he transfers that impact to his children to some extent.
Mm-hmm. If I try to think it like this European refugee you mentioned, Eastern European refugee, immigration generally induces some of this confusion in the person who comes, and that confusion is, I think, perhaps passed down in some ways to the children not actively, but perhaps by fact of you
subconsciously.
It's also just the reality, like in if you grow up in India or Pakistan, you grow up around Indian Pakistanis and you are one of them,
right?
Whereas when you come to a place and an adult, you're already kind of formed as a human in some senses, at least. Though perhaps as you immigrate and then have children, they don't have that experience of developing in a homogeneous society that they are a part of. And so I sometimes wonder what that is like to grow up around people who are like you in some sense.
Oh, they're very comforting. It's very, very, very comforting that everything around you is familiar, everybody around you is familiar, and suddenly you find yourself in an environment where you hardly recognize anybody. I came here, and one day I had a severe pain in my stomach, and I called infirmary. That's the only place I knew, the University of Maryland. And the janitor answered the phone. So I said, is a doctor there? He said, there's no doctor here. I said, I'm in a lot of pain. The janitor said something that was totally surprising to me as a new Pakistani. The janitor said, call the police. I said, why would I call the police? I said, call the police. So I called the police, campus police. And the officer was there in 5 minutes. He said, let me take you to the infirmary. I said, nobody's there. Yes, he says, yes. We have called the doctor. He's there. That was a strange experience for me. And when I saw the doctor, he said, I thought you had appendix. You don't. You're just worried about something. I was worried about something, which is correct. I was out of place. And he gave me some medicine to relax my stomach, and then he put me in a therapy. I spent a lot of time in that therapy. I never said anything. Nobody cared whether I said anything or not, because the others in the therapy were so anxious to talk. So I just kept listening.
It was a group therapy.
It was a group therapy organized by the University of Maryland psychology department.
Mm-hmm.
So that really creates another trauma when you're in an unfamiliar situation. Not everybody feels the way I do. Not everybody feels the way this man from Eastern Europe felt. Most people are very happy in their new environment. They settle down. I never did. I'm not happy in my new environment.
Are you sure that most people feel happy in the new environment?
It seems to me that way. I may not be right.
If I had to guess, I would guess that they might not be. When we talk about immigration, you moved in the 60s.
Right.
I would say that, roughly speaking, you're part of the first group. Our family is part of the first group that participated in this kind of global immigration as such.
That's right.
It wasn't a practice of people going to America and then...
No, it was not.
And it scaled up rapidly with your generation.
Yes.
And in some sense, people didn't know.
We contributed to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, people didn't have any way of knowing, right? It's like, oh, well, we're here, there's some material, this or that, they have better off opportunity over there. Let's go over there, know? But you do it without the possibility, unless you're deeply wise somehow and deeply introspective and you know things. How can you know what the effect is going to be when you get there? How can you know how it's going to feel to try and live there in a different society or have children in that different society, and what kind of struggles or challenges you cannot anticipate before you do this? So you were all part of this first wave that had really no wide-scale precedence to know what to expect. And that's something that I've observed. One thing I wonder, how do you think you would be different if you grew up in an area or an environment where you were kind of a minority and didn't experience a homogeneous kind of village where everyone is basically the same sort of person playing the same game, so to speak, engaged in the same set of values.
I grew up in that situation.
Yeah.
Here. I lived in that situation here, so I know how I feel. I don't feel comfortable.
So that is true. So you, in your second migration, when you came here, you experienced these things.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a difference between experiencing that in your 20s as an adult, at least biological adult, compared to, as for example, your kids?
Kids, I think if there's no trauma around, kids will adjust quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Adult has harder time adjusting even when there's no trauma. I didn't feel any animosity from anybody here.
Mm-hmm.
The people were mostly helpful, but I felt out of place. The way people talked, the way people dressed, the food they ate, everything was strange to me. And I just felt uneasy. I remember that hamburger was the only thing I could eat here. One day I went to a restaurant where I used to go for lunch every day. And the boy, there was no other customer. The boy behind the counter, he said, "What do you want?" I said, "Let me see the menu." He gave me the menu and hung over me. He's waiting. And then I looked at the menu, read everything. Then as I lifted my head, he said, "Hamburger, right?" I said, "Yes." I couldn't eat anything else. And then my kids go to the Vietnamese restaurant, Thai restaurant, Mexican, Peruvian. I can't eat anything.
And you never became used to.
I never became used to.
Interesting.
That's why I want to eat at home. Because at home I have the food that I know I like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I relate to that too, to some degree. But yeah, that's. Do you think that the initial desire or decision to go to America or come to America was part of that same trend of hopping from Black and Decker to just was it part of that same?
It was part of the same. I never wanted to come to America. I was forced by tradition because everybody expected somebody who did good in school will go overseas for higher education, and my father wanted me to come, and I was just following my father's wishes. I never wanted to come. I came and got stuck. I came that I would finish my education and go back. I never went back.
Well, I think zooming out a bit, are there key lessons, broad lessons that are takeaways for people who have not, will not ever experience this kind of event that you think they would benefit from? Some piece of knowledge, some piece of wisdom?
Be grateful that you didn't have this experience. I don't know what lessons I can give them. Just be grateful and be grateful and be kind to others. Respect everybody.
Okay.
It's hard to do.
I think they're basic
observations, but they're foundational.
Right.
And I think they make more sense with the background of this conversation. A little bit of kindness would have been well appreciated, I think, when you came into Pakistan.
Oh, yes. Yes, if somebody has come up and said, how are you? Can I get you some water? Would have been nice. But nobody said that to us. I have heard stories where people say, we were helped by such and such. Maybe they were, and I'm glad they were. We were not. We were on our own to the last day.
So, if people want to understand this further, of course, there is this book.
Right.
Again, it is on Amazon if people want to read it. And you have another book as well. But are there movies, for example, you've mentioned, I think, a few, that people can watch? Maybe there are scenes in them that can help them visualize what you experienced, parts of what you experienced. Of course, it would be imperfect analogy, but...
They have not made a movie specifically on this subject. They have made movies on other subjects in which partition was included as a sub-subject. I have seen one, there is a Punjabi writer and poetess by the name of Martha Piritam. He has written a story called Pinjar, and they made a movie about it. Again, there's something that I cannot watch. I made the mistake of watching that movie. I couldn't sleep for a week. But it does have some scenes that represent what I have seen. However, when Bollywood makes movies or Hollywood makes movies, they take liberties with the subject and they try to put in their own creative information. In this movie, I saw they were showing vendors coming to the refugee camp to sell things. Nothing like that ever happened.
People didn't have money.
Nobody had money. And moreover, why would vendors come there anyway? The bankrupt people, and what are you going to get from the vendors?
It's a strange business proposition.
We never saw any vendors. That we were in Ludhiana for over 2 months. In Pakistan, we stayed here. Nobody ever came as a vendor. So they take liberties like that. But that's the only movie that I know, because I have heard about other movies. I haven't watched them because I don't have the courage to watch them. Watched that by mistake, and then after that, somebody came to my house and asked me if you have any movie. I said, "Here's the movie. Take it. Don't give it back to me."
Okay. Well, I think this has been very good conversation. I'm glad we got to discuss the details of the actual journey in this format, which people will hopefully be able to appreciate, and also to have some more open-ended discussion about what some of the consequences are that perhaps are less understood and less talked about.
We can, let's see how this turns out. Then we can actually go segment by segment on my book and go into more details on each segment.
we could do that. Let's see how people receive
Let's
it.
see this first.
But thank you for
Okay.
taking time
Sure.
to help make this happen.